Welcome, my friends, to Unsolved Mystery Stories. This American mystery is still unsolved to this day. In 1967, two hunters were out in the woods near their town in western Pennsylvania when they saw something that would haunt them forever. They'd been hunting in these woods for years and had never seen anything like what they saw this night. As they got closer to their truck, they said they heard heavy footsteps coming from the forest. At first they assumed it was just a bear or maybe a deer, but whatever it was much too big for any animal they knew. These two men had been hunting together since they were young boys, so they knew the sounds of the forest well. This sound was not like any wild animal they'd ever heard before. The creature seemed to be walking right towards them. It sounded like someone was banging on a hollow log. It was an awful sound. They hid in the truck until they could see better. Then they turned on the headlights, and that's when they saw it. Standing next to the truck was an ape-like creature about 8 feet tall. It looked like Bigfoot, only covered in long flowing hair. And then it did something that made their blood run cold. It reached into the truck and grabbed one of the dogs. The men started screaming. At that very moment, the radio started buzzing loudly, making tons of noise. The creature freaked out and ran off into the woods. When they got out of the truck, the dog was gone. They searched everywhere for the dog and the beast, but neither was to be found. They told people what had happened, but no one believed them. Many people have reported seeing Bigfoot over the years. It's one of America's most famous cryptids. But this case is particularly eerie because of the way the dog simply vanished. It's possible the dog fought back against its attacker and managed to escape, but the two hunters said they heard no struggle and the dog simply disappeared. This mystery has never been solved and we may never know what happened that night. If you enjoy scary stories, make sure to subscribe if you dare. Now, let's move on to the next terrifying tale. Unsolved American Mystery. In the early 2000s, a young woman named Maura Murray vanished without a trace. She was a nursing student at the time and had been driving home to see her family for Christmas break. But she never made it home. Reportedly, she crashed her car in a small town called HaverHills, New Hampshire, and somehow disappeared into thin air. Maura was driving home from her school in Massachusetts when she had a car accident. She was heading north, but witnesses later told police they saw her driving south in the wrong lane. She must have fallen asleep at the wheel and drifted into the other lane. But instead of staying at the scene of the crash, she abandoned her car and took off into the woods. When police arrived at the scene, they found her car with the airbags deployed and all of her belongings inside. There was no sign of a struggle, so it didn't seem like she'd been kidnapped. Her cell phone was on the passenger seat and her purse was under her feet on the brake. Everything was just as they left it. One witness who saw the crash claimed she saw a woman matching Maura's description walking down the road with a backpack. But when police interviewed this woman, she said she didn't see anyone. Police also brought in bloodhounds to try and track Maura down, but they lost her scent after only a few minutes. She was reported missing the next day, but there was still no sign of her anywhere. A massive search effort was launched, but police couldn't find a single clue as to where she went. They searched miles of forest and questioned hundreds of people, but no one had seen her. Days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months, but there was no sign of her. She completely vanished without a trace. This case remains unsolved to this day. Some people believe Maura was kidnapped by a passing motorist. Others think she was involved in something illegal and her body was never found. There's even a rumor that she faked her own death to start a new life somewhere else. But no one knows for sure what happened to her. Unsolved American Mystery. In November of 1949, a group of teenagers were hanging out at a local tavern when they heard some commotion outside. They stepped outside to investigate and saw a man lying on the ground with two others standing over him. They asked what had happened, and the two men told them they had just killed a werewolf. This was in the small town of Hillsboro, Texas. Werewolves weren't supposed to exist, but they were about to find out if this one did. These four friends decided to do a little investigating of their own. They went over to the man and felt for a pulse. He was still alive. They rushed him to the hospital, but he died on the way. The police had already taken the two men who attacked him into custody. When the doctor examined the body, he was shocked by what he saw. The man had horrible injuries all over his chest and arms. He'd been mauled, almost torn apart. But there was something else that was very strange. When the doctor looked into the man's mouth, he saw fangs. There were real, sharp fangs just like a vampire or a werewolf. The police wanted to believe the story about the werewolf, but they had no proof. The two men who attacked the victim said they were just playing around and accidentally killed him. But this didn't really make sense. Who would accidentally kill someone and then go out of their way to cover up the crime? The victim's name was John Churchill, and he was known for being a bit of a troublemaker. He'd gotten into fights in the past, but he'd never attacked anyone with such violence that they needed to kill him. There was no history of mental illness in his family. He wasn't a monster, but the way he was injured suggested that he was attacked by a wild animal. But animals don't usually attack people unless provoked. John Hadoon had been carrying a gun or a knife, and there was nothing he could have done to provoke a wild animal, yet his entire body was covered in bite marks. And then there was the strangest part of the case. After the incident, the two men who killed John Churchill became prime suspects in the case, but mysteriously, both of them vanished. They dropped off the face of the earth. Nobody knows what happened to them or where they went. Some believe they faked their own deaths to escape prosecution. Others think they might have really killed a werewolf and ran away to avoid becoming its next victim. Unsolved American Mystery. One day in 1938, a trucker stopped at a gas station to fill up his tank. While he was pumping gas, he saw something strange in the distance, something moving in the sky like a giant boomerang. He watched as it slowly descended to the ground. He described it as looking like a giant pair of scissors. The owner of the gas station saw the same thing and said it landed in the woods behind the building. It was huge, like a flying saucer, and he swore he heard voices coming from inside. A local sheriff also investigated, but he found no evidence of a crash or any strange vehicle. No one knew what these men were talking about. They were lying. A year later, a man named Paul and his wife were driving down a deserted country road, when they suddenly found themselves enveloped in a bright white light. They pulled over and stepped out of the car. When the light faded, they could see a large object sitting in the middle of the road. It looked like a huge metal flower pot. Paul cautiously approached the object and tried to lift it, but it was far too heavy. He walked around the object, trying to find a way to move it, when suddenly he heard a voice in his head. The voice told him to get back in his car and drive away. He didn't know if it was a joke or if someone was messing with him, but he got back in his car and drove away. Later, he told the police about what had happened, but they refused to take him seriously. He even showed them exactly where the object had been, but by that time, it was gone. Over the years, there have been countless reports of strange objects and flying saucers, but in most cases, the government steps in and explains them away as weather balloons or secret military projects. But in some rare cases, the truth is never revealed. And now you know the disturbing details of these unsolved American mysteries. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out more content. With that, thanks for watching, and be sure to tune in next time.